Coming to you from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio right here in the Uribe compound, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. Before I begin, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just take this opportunity to thank all of you who have reached out to not only myself, but my family during this very difficult time concerning the passing of my grandmother. And I'm just delighted to know that hundreds of people have reached out to us in the last week concerning Sierra Gonzalez. We were very lucky to have her for 101 years. And she was the kindest, warmest, and just one of the most amazing women I've ever met in my lifetime. And we were saddened to lose her recently. But she lived a very full life, and she brought a lot of joy and happiness to my entire family. And again, just seeing all the warmth and encouragement and support on not only social media, but via telephone and even text messaging, it's extremely overwhelming and just humbling to see hundreds and hundreds of people reaching out to us during this very difficult time. So I want to say thank you to everyone who took the few minutes to reach out to all of us, including myself, my mother, and the rest of my family during this very sort of tumultuous and very emotional time for us. We love you, Grandma, and we will continue to honor your memory each and every day. And I'll continue to work hard here on this show and in all my projects to continue making you proud. And I know how much we all loved you, and I know how much you loved us. And we will certainly miss you and keep your memory alive forever here, not just on this program, but in everything that I do for the rest of my life. So once again, thank you to everybody who took the opportunity to send their condolences and their warm wishes during this very difficult time for my family. We'll never forget that, and of course, Grandma will never forget you. Now, there are a lot of stories to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, it's dominated the news cycle in recent days, and it's one that certainly has captured my eye. And of course, you all know how I feel about Planned Parenthood, and listening to the reality that the Small Business Administration is looking to take Planned Parenthood to task is something, quite frankly, that brings a smile to my face. Now, let me give you some facts here to unravel exactly some of the shady business that Planned Parenthood has been engaged in during the COVID-19 crisis. Now, it's been reported that the Small Business Administration is demanding that at least one Planned Parenthood affiliate return a Paycheck Protection Program loan, alleging that the affiliate wrongfully received the funding because the overall organization is too large to qualify for the program. Now, in a letter to Planned Parenthood of Delaware, dated last week and obtained by many news outlets, not just here in New Jersey, but throughout the country, the SBA wrote that because Planned Parenthood of Delaware is, quote, a local affiliate of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, we have primarily concluded, therefore, that PPD is ineligible for a Paycheck Protection Program loan under the applicable affiliate rules and size standards, consistent with the congressional intent, and that the loan you have received should be returned. Now, the letter notes that the $496,000 loan that the Delaware affiliate applied for and received is one of 338 loans that the PPFA local affiliates have applied for through the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, in total, PPFA local affiliates have applied for more than $80 million in Paycheck Protection Program loans. Now, it's unclear if the Small Business Administration is asking those affiliates to return the loans that they've actually received. Now, folks, something that really caught my eye about this is the fact that the Justice Department, and thankfully, Attorney General William Barr, is going to be looking into Planned Parenthood. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear about something, because I know that this might piss off some locals and some SJWs and people who tend to sort of lean center-left or just downright liberal. I understand that you're in love with Planned Parenthood and you find it to be one of those essential businesses that need to be open during the COVID-19 crisis. Well, folks, let me tell you something. And when we think about all the small businesses that have been affected during the coronavirus crisis, for Planned Parenthood to act as if they're some sort of essential small business and to try to, let's be honest, defraud the federal government and the SBA specifically by applying for a loan that they know fully well doesn't apply to them, I just think is wrong It's reprehensible, but it shouldn't surprise you folks because Planned Parenthood has had sort of a history of being very shady in some of their practices. And one that stands out for me and one that I will continue to denounce each and every day is the fact that Planned Parenthood in the past, and to some extent even presently, still receives federal subsidies for their existence. Now, one of the things that I always love to read in my news cycle is how Planned Parenthood loves to cry poverty. And this is even before the COVID-19 crisis. If you all remember, in 2018, they received a good amount of money from the federal government. And what did they turn around and say? And they weren't even shy about it. They went out and said publicly, we're going to take some of this money and we're going to endorse Democratic candidates in the upcoming midterm elections. And of course, even after 2018, Planned Parenthood has made no reservations and they haven't been shy about declaring the fact that they're going to endorse whoever the Democratic nominee would eventually be. Now, of course, this is long before the primary process was completed. And as we all know, the former Vice President, Joe Biden, is now clearly the Democratic nominee to run for president coming up this November. But even leading up to that, Planned Parenthood was very adamant about the fact that they're going to be endorsing Democratic candidates. Now, that's fine, folks. Listen, I don't really want to sort of get into a pissing match here about who organizations endorse or anything else. They're free to do what they want. But if they're receiving federal tax dollars, that's something that just doesn't sit well with me. Now, let me give you a perspective here that should hopefully open your eyes about how intellectually dishonest Planned Parenthood is being. Let's just say for a moment that the National Rifle Association would receive any taxpayer dollars. For the record, they don't. They're a self-sustaining nonprofit organization. And the reason that they exist is through generous donations from regular Americans like you and I. Now, just imagine for a moment if the NRA took even a nickel of taxpayer dollars and they turned around and said, you know what, in the upcoming presidential election, we're going to endorse the Republican candidate for president. Folks, let's be very clear. Liberals, SJWs, and everybody else under the liberal sun would be losing their minds. They'd be taking to the streets and denouncing this practice. But fortunately, the NRA doesn't take a nickel of taxpayer dollars. So when you might say to yourself, well, Fernando, this is apples and oranges. No, it's not. Because I want to make you realize how dishonest Planned Parenthood is being. They're taking your taxpayer dollars and in turn either investing it in a super PAC or in some other sort of manner, taking those taxpayer dollars and looking to endorse Democratic candidates. Again, folks, they can endorse whoever they want, but the fact that they're taking taxpayer dollars is wrong. And furthermore, let me put this out on the record here. Folks, I have been a beneficiary of Planned Parenthood certainly during my early 20s. When we're all in college, we do certain things that we regret. And of course, we look at an institution like Planned Parenthood as something that's essential. So I'm not going to denounce the institution overall because I'm sure myself, as well as many of you, have benefited at some point in time from some of the medical uses that Planned Parenthood provides for not just only women, but also men. So again, I don't want to be a hypocrite here and sort of denounce them completely. But what I'm going to do is take them to task as to why they're taking millions of taxpayer dollars and weaponizing it for political purposes. That's what they're doing here. And when I hear that the Small Business Administration that was, inundated with thousands of applications from small businesses all across the country, some of these small businesses won't recover and they might just close permanently. These are the small businesses that I think you should really feel sorry for. You shouldn't feel sorry for Planned Parenthood. They'll be fine. They get a lot of generous donations and endowments from other organizations and from a lot of left-wing activists, which include liberal Hollywood, as well as liberal politicians and liberal organizations. So don't cry poverty for them and don't feel sorry for Planned Parenthood. They'll be fine on their own. But for a long time, they've received federal taxpayer dollars. And the fact that they decide to take some of their taxpayer dollars and use it to politicize topics or politicize causes is just downright wrong. Folks, again, whether it's the NRA example I just gave, or even, let's just say it was the American Cancer Society. And that's an organization that's near and dear to my heart because I volunteer for them every October during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But let's just say for the sake of argument that, let's say the American Cancer Society, which is also a nonprofit organization, and they do receive some federal subsidies, absolutely, and I'm glad that they do. I mean, I think we can all be in agreement that we want to defeat cancer in all its forms as soon as possible. But let's just imagine for a second that ACS decided to say, well, you know what, we're going to take taxpayer dollars and we're going to endorse, let's say, Republican candidates. I think many people on the left would be upset that the ACS as an institution and as a nonprofit organization are taking their ideology and not putting it into practice by endorsing candidates. So it goes both ways, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't want to just, sort of denounce Planned Parenthood because they lean very liberal and always endorse Democratic candidates. I'm just sort of making the example as whether it was being done to support Republican candidates or Democratic candidates, the practice is just wrong. You shouldn't be taking taxpayer dollars and using it to engage in politicking. It's as simple as that. But for whatever reason, Planned Parenthood, whenever they're called out on this, will make excuses. They'll sort of, gallivant with their usual rhetoric and deflect. Well, you know what? It's time for someone to hold them accountable. And I know in recent headlines, U.S. Senators Marco Rubio, Mitch McConnell, and others have been asking the Department of Justice to look into this. Because quite frankly, folks, what Planned Parenthood is doing is defrauding the federal government. If they're going to take taxpayer dollars, specifically from an SBA loan, which, let's be honest, folks, they don't apply for that. Okay, we're not talking about small businesses here where the Paycheck Protection Program should apply to them. They're a very large organization, whether it's the central headquarters or even any of the affiliates in all the 50 states. They're not a small organization, folks. So for them to even apply for an SBA loan, I think is just shady. It's dishonest. And again, it continues to add to the very notorious reputation that Planned Parenthood continues to develop for itself. I don't feel sorry for them because they've brought it on themselves. So when people go around, let's say, who are activists for Planned Parenthood and say, well, I think we're being unnecessarily targeted. No, you're not. You're making your own bed. So, you should sleep in it now. If you're going to take taxpayer dollars under false pretenses, which this is clearly what happened here with the SBA, then you should be held accountable. You're grown-ups. Start acting like it. And don't be doing things under a very shady manner or engaging in some sort of chicanery, thinking that, hey, it won't be reported on or it'll go under the radar. Thankfully, it hasn't. And even for liberal organizations like CNN, MSNBC, and of course others, the Washington Post, the New York Times, to be reporting on it, it should really make you aware of how dishonest the practice is by Planned Parenthood. And even when liberal news organizations are exposing it, it should give you a moment of pause and make you realize that, they're not as noble as they act out to be on a daily basis. So kudos to organizations such as Fox News. And I know what you're going to say, you may not like Tucker Carlson for whatever reason, but thank God for people like Tucker Carlson, because you know what? He was the first one to break this story. He was the first one to sort of raise awareness about this dishonest practice concerning Planned Parenthood. So shout out to him. And you know what? Shout out to even the liberal news organizations that had the integrity. And I know for them, that's sort of a stretch because they don't know what integrity is on a daily basis. But kudos to them for having the integrity to report on this story. And I'll keep you posted in the weeks and months ahead as to what the Department of Justice will do and how they should punish both criminally and civilly Planned Parenthood here in 2020. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, was local political activist Petra John. Now, she's a student at Bayonne High School and is also the president of the Turning Point USA chapter at the school. And for over 75 minutes, we discussed a variety of different topics concerning local, state, and even national politics. And here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we discussed what was her epiphany about becoming a conservative and even embracing a lot of conservative ideology. Let's check out what she had to say about it.
Petra, I got to say, as I don't know how much of my opening monologue you just heard, but one of the things that really stands out for me about doing a podcast like this, and I know when I see student activists like you being so vocal and being so animated out there, I have to say it's encouraging because, as someone like me who works in academia and works in higher education, we all know that liberalism has infested higher ed for probably more than 50 years. And maybe I'm being conservative with that number. And that's not like me being hyperbolic, or that's not me engaging in some conspiracy theory, because it's not. As a professor, I deal with a lot of my peers in academia, especially in the social sciences. They're very liberal. They're quite unapologetic about it. And one of the things that scares me about them is the fact that they have no reservations about engaging in blatant indoctrination, which is what we're seeing. What's scary, though, is that now we're seeing liberal indoctrination in our school system, not just be at the top in higher ed, but now it's filtering down into our high schools, into our middle schools, and even to our elementary schools. And Petra, as you're a high school senior, You're a very visible student activist. I know Talking Points USA is, again, one of the more reputable nonprofits in the state and also in the country. But at the end of the day, what was your epiphany, not just about getting involved with Talking Points USA, but clearly you're someone that is not the typical millennial, that doesn't subscribe to the typical, liberal politics that seems to be engulfing millennials today. What was your epiphany in terms of getting you to where you are today ideologically, Petra?
Well, no, I just want to say you're absolutely right. I mean, as a high school student, I expected indoctrination on the college level, right? I didn't expect it to come down to the high school level. And it was sad because I would sit in classes and, like you said, teachers are extremely open about being liberal. And it's not just that they're pointing that kind of view, but they're indoctrinating you with it. If you are a conservative in class, you're suddenly the elephant in class, literally and not literally, And it's not that my generation was opposed to the conservative ideas. I think they're not exposed to the conservative ideas. I mean, most young people here today, or in New Jersey at least, they don't like big government. They don't trust the government, yet they support ideas and people who only want to make it bigger without really knowing that because of the indoctrination. And I don't blame them because they're surrounded by a liberal media, liberal Hollywood, your football athletes or just athletes in general are lean liberal. Your singers lean liberal as well. The classroom leans liberal. Your parents are probably also liberal. So I think that's why I wanted to start Turning Point USA. I wanted to offer that other perception, bring that conversation and have some sort of platform where we allow our students to talk about politics. Students have been told that politics is a no-no subject and you can't talk about it on campus, but then they're being preached to, liberal policies and leftist policies by teachers that even openly identify as communists in class. So I think that's why I started Turning Point USA.
Secondly, we discussed why she gravitated towards Turning Point USA when there are so many other conservative organizations out there. But as you can tell, she's very passionate about what Turning Point USA stands for, and she's definitely very enthused to be an advocate at Bayonne High School. Let's hear what she had to say about it.
Now, Petra, I just have to ask because I think that, students, if they're conservative or they're center-right, they could probably just say, well, we'll start a conservative student club or a conservative student union. Or they'll just say, well, we'll start a young conservatives club or we'll start a teenage Republican club. I mean, these are all different variations. But why specifically Turning Point? Like, what led you to gravitate to Turning Point USA? I mean, I know why, but I want my audience to hear it from you. What was sort of, for you, the determining factor where it was Turning Point USA and not just, as I said before, any of the aforementioned different variations of, let's say, a conservative student organization?
Right. I think that's an excellent question. The reason why I chose Turning Point USA, because at the time, Turning Point USA, and continues today, and even more than at the time, but Turning Point USA has had such a good base. It grew nationally very quickly. It had chapters all across the country, in college campuses, in high school campuses. It really ignited that movement, and it wasn't that boring movement where, you sit down and you're being lectured at for however many minutes on a certain political topic, but it was interactive. It got kids my age and students my age hyped up about, these political issues. It was more modern. It took that modern approach while also protecting these conservative values and these Republican values and ideas. And I think that's very relevant to students my age. I think that's very grabbing and attractive to students my age. And Charlie has been doing an amazing job. My regional director has been doing an amazing job. So we've been very thankful to have all of this help and the activism and whatnot. So I think a large part of why it's very successful is because a lot of their content and the way they approach students my age and my generation is very grabbing.
Lastly, we talked about how toxic liberalism has been on only higher education, but how it's trickling down into our high schools, middle schools, and even elementary schools. And quite frankly, how it's making students ill-prepared when they go to college when it comes to discussing the social sciences or even anything concerning current events. Let's check out what she had to say.
Do you feel that way? Again, I know you're a little bit away from entering college, but do you feel that you're on that trajectory?
Yeah, right. So two things I want to touch upon. Like what you said, with high school students not being prepared enough to enter college, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the same students, or at least in my experience, the same students who continuously complain about history class, never do the work or hand it in, sleep in history class, say, why are we even taking history? It's dead people, I don't find it relevant. are the same people that are, supporting AOC, and they're not worried about our rights being stripped away. And hence why you don't know why the Second Amendment is so valued and why we value these rights and hold them very dearly. It's because you don't know the founding of our country, and you don't know these basic principles that every American should really know. And so I 100% agree with you there. I think we need to do a better job at the high school level at just teaching this American history. And it's sad because we learn more about the negative sides of that in high school than the positive sides. And then, the liberating, patriotic sides, the sides that we should learn about, and the sides that we should hold dear. And with that as well, with your college point, I'm very glad that you have this talk with your students. And I hope that all professors have this talk with their students. And it's a shame that they don't, because, when college students graduate, they'll have to enter the real world. And, I also wonder if college prepares them to enter the real world, just like as our high school classes prepare us to go into college. And I think that diversity of thought is extremely important. It's the most important form of diversity, and there's no safe spaces in the real world. So I do like the fact that you say that to your students, and you encourage these debates and arguments in a healthy style, and that's something that we don't have at the high school level for the most part, at least. Some teachers do. I have some teachers that are phenomenal at the high school. I don't want to make it seem like all of them are that way. Most don't on the national level as well, and I think that we need to do a better job at our academics and just our school system in preparing these students for the real world, teaching them that there's no safe spaces and that freedom of thought and freedom of opinion and freedom of speech should be protected and held dear at all costs.
As you can tell, she's very passionate about being a conservative. And for many millennials and even Generation Z students like herself, it's very difficult in today's political climate. But it's not deterred her from being an advocate for conservative values and even being center-right in an area like here in Hudson County, where preeminently it's comprised of so many left-leaning Democrats and even downright liberals. I'll continue to have wonderful guests like Petra throughout the rest of the year, and you can listen to the episode in its entirety by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson. While you're home under quarantine, download it and you can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And now to some local stories for your consideration. And I'm happy to report that the artistic community here in Hudson County will indeed get some share of the relief package for COVID-19. Now, as reported by Ron Zettlinger at the Jersey Journal, and by the way, a shout out to him for his excellent reporting on this story, 4 Hudson County arts organizations and the county's Office of Cultural Affairs will share nearly $30,000 in federal coronavirus relief funds, according to the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. Now, Art House Productions, Nimbus Dance Works, Scola Cantorum on the Hudson, and the Kennedy Dancers will receive $5,000 each from the $492,000 awarded through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act to state nonprofit arts organizations. Now, the aim of the funding is to help preserve jobs and stabilize arts organizations. Now, overall, 59 artistic groups each received $5,000, and each of the 21 counties' offices of cultural and heritage affairs each received $9,400, according to local officials. There was a statement put out last week on the matter, and it reads as follows. Quote, the nonprofit arts industry, like so many others, is reeling from the financial and societal impact of the current crisis. Now, that was Council Chairwoman Elizabeth Matson. She also wanted to say health and safety remains the highest priorities as organizations that exist to bring people together attempt to adapt to restrictions, cancellations, layoffs, refunds, and mounting expenses. Now, the arts community was hit especially hard by the state shutdown, which has been in effect since mid-March here in the Garden State. Now, one of the things that's very interesting, folks, and as you all know, I'm very much a staunch advocate for the arts. I enjoy going to local exhibits, local plays, and just seeing performances overall. I have many friends in the artistic community that have been hit very hard during COVID-19. So any relief that could help the artistic community, I think, you know what, I'm all for it. And I'm sure as we return to some sense of normalcy here in Hudson County and in New Jersey for that matter, hopefully the arts will get much more of an audience in the weeks and months ahead. And now we move to downtown Jersey City, where guess what, more development is coming near the Holland Tunnel. Now, excellent story reported on by Joshua Rosario at the Jersey Journal details that 2 new high-rise projects have been approved for the area right outside the Holland Tunnel. Now, a pair of 12-story buildings and a 21-story tower are coming to a Jersey City neighborhood that continues to undergo a dramatic transformation. Now, the project will include construction of a new street between Monmouth and Coles that will be publicly accessible and have a private road as well. Now, Don Pepe, the attorney for the project itself, said construction on the 3.7-acre complex is expected to begin sometime this summer once the COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted by the state, and should take approximately 18 months. Officials hope to have it completed by late stages of 2021. Now, Mr. Pepe went on to say, quote, "There are still a few outstanding approvals, but otherwise it's really funding the project to get the construction financing in place." Now, the complex will include a mix of studio apartments as well as 1 and 2 bedroom units. The southern building will have 308 units, and the northern building will have 203 units. Now, the complex is being planned alongside a 21-story tower developed by the Albanese organization, a New York-based developer that will also build residential towers at the end of the 6th Street embankment in downtown Jersey City. Now, the building will be bound by Cole Street to the west and Jersey Avenue to the east, as well as 17th and 16th Streets to the north and south, respectively. Now, the complex will feature a 21-story tower, a 14-story section, and the other 2 components of 7 and 5 stories collectively. Now, the Albanese organization did respond to requests for comment on the project, but Mr. Pepe said the company is coordinating its development with the Hoboken Brownstone Company. Now, the multi-tiered building will feature 670 units and 350 parking spaces. Now, the 1.83-acre project will also include 350 spaces for bicycles and have an interior courtyard on the ground floor visible from 16th Street. Now, folks, let me just say this because I'm always someone that takes a lot of pride in being a Hudson County native. I was born and raised here, specifically in West New York. And when I lived in New Brunswick for a short amount of time during my undergraduate years at Rutgers University, I've always called Hudson County my home. And one thing I've seen dramatically in the last, let's say, decade or so has been the overwhelming development, not just here in North Hudson where I live, but along Hoboken and even the Jersey City waterfronts. We're also seeing it by Route 440 and even the Jersey City Heights. And ladies and gentlemen, this is something that really concerns me because it will continue to price out lifelong Jersey City residents. I get it. You want to sort of take away the eyesore component of that downtown section by the Holland Tunnel. And I understand, folks, it's not like the nicest thing to look at. Some shady areas by there, to say the very least. But one thing that really concerns me, again, is how this is going to price out, lifelong residents that have been living along, let's say, Marin Boulevard or even Cole Street or even Jersey Avenue, respectively. Folks, the cost of living is skyrocketing here in New Jersey and more specifically here in Hudson County. Now, again, I don't know who approved it, and I'm sure that the city council did their due diligence on it, but at the end of the day, folks, these are the type of units that go for very, very high rents. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, www.livestream.com/hmgtv, and www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like them both on Facebook and follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can listen to the 3-time award-winning podcast Talking the Hudson by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. While you're home under quarantine, download it, and you can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group and NG On Air. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.